The storm didn't begin with fireworks. It started with whispers. Faint, suspicious murmurs swirling through the corridors of power and social media alike. What happened to the missing £5 million sterling 0 pence from the Buckingham Palace renovation budget? Who approved it, and more importantly, where did it really go? In a country battling rising food prices and unaffordable electricity bills, the royal family's golden silence was starting to rot. At the center of it all stood Prince William, not in a ceremonial robe, but in a gray suit, face lined with the weight of inherited responsibility. He wasn't just the heir anymore, he was becoming the voice of a public demanding answers. In a quiet room at Kensington Palace, William leaned over a polished oak desk stacked with audit reports, his hand scribbling notes in the margins like a man building a case for trial. He wasn't looking for drama, he was looking for truth. Across town at Clarence House, Queen Camilla was far from rattled. Draped in silk and sipping her evening red, she played her part with ease. To her, the monarchy wasn't a glass house of transparency, it was a fortress. She'd spent years earning her place within its gates, and now she ruled with quiet calculation. But those whispers were getting louder. Headlines started teasing her name, royal finances under review, Camilla's charities questioned. She tossed the papers aside like gnats, refusing to be cornered by rumors. But William wasn't dealing in rumors, he was following a paper trail. In his team, led by his trusted advisor James from the Duchy of Cornwall, had uncovered something disturbing. Several sovereign grant expenses, particularly from the Palace Renovation Fund, were traced to charities directly tied to Camilla's children. And some of that money, it had gone offshore, disappearing through channels no one wanted to admit existed. William didn't want to believe it at first. This was the woman who stood by his father's side, who'd endured decades of public hate only to be embraced as queen, but the numbers didn't lie. He called a meeting, one room, one table, one mission. King Charles sat in the middle, hands shaking slightly as he tried to keep his family from fracturing. On one side sat William, calm, composed, but with the fire of purpose in his eyes. On the other, Camilla, cold, unblinking, and certain of her power. William laid the documents down like evidence in a courtroom. Every expense must be accounted for, he said, voice firm but respectful, even those tied to extended family. Camilla didn't flinch, but the sting was clear. "You're accusing me now?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "The monarchy isn't a corner shop, William. We don't open the books to every commoner who throws a tantrum." Her words dripped with disdain, but William didn't budge. Charles tried to play mediator, urging both to step back before things went too far. But even he could see this was no longer just a disagreement, it was a reckoning. William had touched a nerve, and Camilla wasn't just offended, she was threatened. Because buried beneath all that royal protocol was a truth she feared most. She no longer controlled the narrative. That night, as London's rain glazed the palace roofs, two strategies began to form. William would go public. He believed sunlight was the only cure for the monarchy's growing rot. Camilla, on the other hand, had no intention of surrendering her place or her secrets. She called in her media advisor and began laying the groundwork for a very different kind of war. One fought in headlines and whispers, not council chambers. And neither of them knew yet just how far this battle would go. The leak hit the tabloids like a wrecking ball. Prince William to cut royal security budget, family furious. The headline, plastered across glossy covers at every London newsstand, turned heads and twisted stomachs. Inside Kensington Palace, William stared at the newspaper, jaw clenched. He never said anything about security cuts. Not once. But the rumor had already spread, timed with surgical precision. His push for financial transparency was now being framed as recklessness. And everyone knew exactly who planted the story. Camilla's fingerprints were all over it. The article cited palace insiders concerned for the queen consort's safety. It painted William as a populist puppet, willing to endanger the royal family to gain public favor. In reality, William's audit wasn't about making headlines, it was about accountability. But with one well-placed lie, Camilla had turned public doubt back toward him. At Clarence House, Camilla sat before a roaring fire, champagne in hand, watching coverage of the unfolding chaos. Her media advisor Simon stood nearby, arms crossed, confident. The Privy Council is growing nervous, he said. If they believe William's risking security, they'll back off his proposal. Camilla smiled faintly. Let him try to look noble now, she murmured. Public favor fades faster than perfume. But William wasn't interested in playing defense. He knew the truth, and he trusted the public could sense sincerity when they saw it. The very next day, he stood in Trafalgar Square, no palace walls to shield him, addressing a sea of ordinary people. Dressed in a simple navy coat, he spoke without notes. We receive taxpayer money, that's a fact, and it's our duty to show how every pound is used. No one, royal or not, is above accountability. The crowd erupted. A video of the speech went viral within hours. Elderly citizens cheered in the comments. Students called him the real king. And hashtags praising his boldness flooded the timeline. For the first time in years, the public didn't just see a future monarch, they saw a man who understood them. The tide was turning. Camilla watched the speech on her tablet with a tight-lipped expression. The applause, the cheers, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. She had expected backlash, confusion, hesitation, not admiration, not this unwavering support. Her grip on the device tightened. He's playing the long game, she whispered almost to herself. I underestimated him. That night, a dossier was delivered to William's office. James had completed the audit. No speculation now, just hard proof. A full £5 million sterling, 0 pence, funneled into organizations tied to Camilla's children, some routed through international accounts. There were emails, transaction records, even meeting notes. It was airtight, and it changed everything. William didn't feel victorious. He felt betrayed. These weren't just numbers, they were choices. Choices that risked the monarchy's future, made behind closed doors, funded by public money. He stared at the documents for a long time before finally speaking. We're not going to leak this, he said to James. We're going to do it the right way. I'll bring it to the council myself. At Clarence House, Camilla remained unaware. She believed she still held the upper hand, still believed her media machine could spin its way out of any corner. She didn't know that the battle had shifted from whispers to facts, and that William, the quiet heir she once dismissed, now held the truth and a choice. The fog over London thickened, blanketing the city in silence, but behind palace walls a storm was forming. And in Buckingham's ancient halls, a council room was being prepared for a meeting that could change everything. The room was heavy with history, dark oak walls, tall windows veiled with royal blue drapes, and a long table that had hosted generations of quiet crises. Today, it would witness something different. Prince William stood at its head, back straight, jaw firm. He didn't bring dramatics, just a folder. Inside it, evidence so damning it silenced even the most hardened aristocrat. He placed the documents on the table. No theatrics, no speeches, just a quiet command. Read them. The Privy Council leaned in, scanning bank statements, financial trails, and correspondences tying Queen Camilla's children to diverted funds. Some looked up, stunned. Others didn't meet William's eyes at all. Camilla sat at the far end, regal as ever in a deep purple silk dress, but her fingers trembled slightly against the polished armrest. She hadn't expected this level of preparation. She hadn't expected him to wait. William's calm unnerved her more than shouting ever could. What are you implying? She said, her voice low but sharp. That I stole? That I funneled money to my family in secret? Her eyes scanned the room seeking allies. Silence answered. The Earl of Landown, once her staunch supporter, looked down at his hands. The Duchess of Arlington pretended to be deeply absorbed in a receipt. Even Charles, seated at the middle of the table, looked pale and distant. Camilla's breath caught. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about isolation. William didn't raise his voice. No one's accusing you of theft, Your Majesty, but funds meant for renovations were redirected without oversight. That can't happen under a monarchy funded by the people. She scoffed, the noise brittle. You think public trust is built on ledgers? It's built on tradition, on dignity. You're tearing that down to look good in the press. William's stare was unwavering. I'm not trying to look good. I'm trying to be honest. He turned back to the council. I propose a withdrawal of Queen Camilla from all official financial duties, full repayment of the £5 million sterling, 0 pence, and a permanent ban on financial oversight roles. Gasps stirred. The room erupted in low murmurs. Camilla rose to her feet, fury flashing across her face. You're going to regret this, she hissed. Charles remained seated. His hands were clasped, his face unreadable. Camilla turned to him, desperate. "Say something." He didn't speak, didn't even look at her. The silence was his answer. After a tense vote, the council agreed. Camilla would remain queen consort in title, but her power was gone. No official duties, no say in royal finances, and the £5 million sterling 0 pence to be repaid from her private accounts? The verdict struck like thunder. Camilla didn't wait for ceremony. She turned on her heel and walked out, the echo of her heels a drumbeat of defeat. Her head was high, but her eyes were glassy. For someone who had fought decades to stand beside a king, this was exile in everything but name. Days later, William stood on the main balcony of Buckingham Palace, sunlight pouring over him. Below, a sea of people waved flags and held signs, handwritten messages of support, trust, hope. He smiled, small and sincere, and raised his hand. Behind a curtain in a shadowed room, Camilla watched through a slit. No crown could save her from this moment, not anymore. She'd kept her title, but lost the throne she'd built in silence. Her reflection in the window showed a queen in name, but a ghost in influence. "You think this is over?" she whispered to herself, her voice like wind through broken glass. "I'm not finished." William didn't hear her. He stood in the light, face calm, gaze fixed on the horizon. He wasn't celebrating, he was preparing for the next storm, the next decision, the next fight to keep the crown worthy of the people beneath it.